So this section was on evolution and its effects on psychology and behavior and the rest of neuroscience. So it starts out by just discussing common themes of evolution. So it starts out by talking about naturalists, who were the people who formed and classified the students of the forms and classifications of organisms, who helped shift the idea that organisms were all created in one individual like after another, like all different species, rather than the fact that they evolved from common ancestors. So evolution is descent with modification. So it's the continual change across generations, which you gain and lose features, and sometimes creating new species that branch off of that. So natural selection is the theory that drives evolution. It's proposed by Charles Darwin and a guy bless him, Wallace. And so Darwin has his theories, the finches and their changes, and the tortoises and their different spiraled shells and stuff like that. So the four bases of natural selection are that reproduction will tend to increase population rapidly unless factors limit it. So food and shelter limit rapid repopulation. But if those are absent, and predators actually too, but if those things are absent, then they'll continue to reproduce. Individuals of a given species are not identical, so just because they're the same species doesn't make them the same. Because with humans, same thing. Some of the variation among individuals is inherited, so you're going to inherit traits from your parents, the people that create the people and organisms that create you. And not all offspring of a given generation survive to reproduce. So, not every smaller animal will continue to reproduce when it grows or if it gets to grow. So individuals with variation that made them better suited to survive and reproduce continued to thrive and pass on adaptations. So with Darwin's finches, a lot of it was the beak size that was different. For ones that ate seeds, they had wider beaks that created more pressure in a smaller area to crack seeds open. Others had longer beaks to catch smaller insects and peck through trees. So adaptations are traits that increase the probability of reproduction. So if you can find food better than the other finches on the island, then you're likely to reproduce and survive, and your adaptations will pass on. So another thing that Darwin proposes is sexual selection, which is members of each sex exert selective pressures on the other in terms of both anatomical and behavioral features that favor reproductive success. So sexual selection includes things like mate behavior, dances and stuff like that. Blue-footed boobies do like a weird patting dance and stuff like that that helps promote their reproduction. Evolution may converge upon similar solutions. So convergent evolution is similarities between behavior or structure between distantly related organisms that is caused by a response to ecological features. So responses to environments that cause organisms to have similar adaptations but not be similar as far as their like past ancestors go. So this thing called homoplasy, which is resemblance between physical or behavioral characteristics that is due to convergent evolution. So because of convergent evolution, there's resemblance between physical and behavioral characteristics. So maybe a finch in the Galapagos has a similar beak size compared to a woodpecker somewhere in North America. Homology is resemblance based on common ancestry, so that's more like certain fishes descending from the same organism, or different, yeah, fish are a good example. Analogy is similar function, although they may look different. So how bat wings look different than some other bird wings, but they still function to fly. Modern evolution, I think about, is natural selection and genetics. So genetics, there's mutations, which are changes in nucleotide sequence of a gene as a result of unfaithful replication. So basically, the replication is processed wrong, and it creates a different part of the species, even sometimes creating a different species. Genetics is the study of the mechanisms of inheritance. Chromosomes are important in this, which are supercoiled lengths of DNA found within the nucleus that contain the genes, and genes encode the information for constructing particular proteins for cell replication and continued growth. You can determine how closely related two species are using their phylogeny, their evolutionary history of a particular group of organisms. So, tracking the similar ancestry of, say, humans and other like chimpanzees or something like that. Taxonomy is the classification of organisms, so into different groups. So usually by genus and species is how they're identified. So Homo is the genus, Sapiens is the species. Same thing with like Panthera tigris is like a tiger's. Panthera is like a big cat. Genus and species, their species is tigers. They developed things called dating branches to see when evolution like diverged. So a lot of organisms come from a similar relative, but they all diverge at different times. So you can make one of these with like apes and other primates, and like humans diverge later than like certain chimpanzees and stuff like that, or like rhesus monkeys. But they aren't as accurate because one, it's hard to comprehend millions of years and how long that really is because they seem close on this thing, but on the dating branch, but in reality it would be 2 million years before they actually changed. And it's also hard because we don't always discover the first specimen, so we don't always know when they came about. So why we study other species is because certain species have ecological niches, so they have specific areas where in their environment and opportunities and challenges that they are able to overcome using specific adaptations. So comparing the two species leads to deeper understanding because the evolutionary framework provides additional explanatory power. We also study them because of outstanding features, so bats and their sonar, certain owls in their vision, like things like that, hawks in their vision, and it just makes it so that you understand these things. Convenience because lab rats and ants are convenient to study. They're smaller. They can be kept in specific things in specific temperatures, small areas, and they're not hard to work with. Comparison because closely related species that behave differently allow for behavioral hypothesis and testing. Preservation, so we study endangered organisms so we know how to help them survive. Economic importance, so we can study cows and chickens and stuff like that so that we can increase the yield that we get from them and hopefully increase production. And then sometimes we study these animals for treatments of diseases because we can make models from them. So giving rats certain drugs can simulate Alzheimer's in the rats, and then we can see how we can treat that. So it's another reason why just to study organisms.